Good morning, everybody. Thank you for getting up early and coming here to our July 21st Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting. Leanne, can you please take a roll call?
Absolutely. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte, present. Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Hay.
Present.
Philip Hood.
Present.
John Marsden.
Present.
Susan Ryder, absent.
All right, we have a quorum. We can begin. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We start our meeting every week with the opportunity for public comment, and we will also end it that way. So if you'd like to address the board, please feel free to do so now. Just state your name and address, and just make sure you speak into the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Carl Lambrecht. I'm from Highland Park, Illinois. This is the Illinois School Code. You see how thick it is? It's all the rules and regulations about education in Illinois. But it's not complete. And it's out of date. It's out of date the moment it's printed because the corrupt laws in this state are changing all the time. There's about 200 laws in here which have been added, subtracted, amended. It's 2010. There's already every 2 years they do it. There's no point, you get the same thing online. Basically what I'm here to talk about is reduction in taxes. Very simply done by reducing bureaucracy. Keeping the board in place. Lake Forest has made an example of what can be done legally within the rules of the game of education. They have 2 school boards, 1 superintendent. The center of education for our communities started in Highland Park. Basically, Highland Park High School at one time was called Shields Deerfield Township High School. And basically, if you were living here, you went there to go to high school. The same in Deerfield, Lake Forest. And basically, there are now 7 school districts plus 1 emanating from this central area. And basically, I'm not proposing to change that at all. Keep the districts the way they are, keep the local color. Keep the way people want things in the local area, but reduce the number of superintendents. It's only necessary to have 1 superintendent for this 7 plus 1. That plus the bureaucracy that's entailed with superintendents would very simply reduce the cost. And in fact, you're talking about a referendum that's not necessary. I know this from experience in Highland Park. We have a ridiculous referendum with millions and tens of millions of dollars in borrowing debt, which was not necessary. It's not improving education at all. And you can see it by the record. Highland Park High School, for 10 years, has been on the federal record of having a poor school, not meeting federal standards. Now, whatever federal standards means, I don't think we should recognize that we need a federal standard or a state standard. We need local standards, because that's what means something. Each referendum has reduced the quality of education. And basically, there's one new plan called one-to-one education. This is moving slowly. It costs nearly nothing to implement. But it means picking up a book and reading. That's one-to-one education. That's how I went to school. I found it the most useful. When I had a question, I asked the teacher. So what I'm trying to say is, look at what you're doing, see how you're spending money, and remember, the board is the boss. The board decides everything. And I think this is the way it should be. And I'm sure you have a qualified, good superintendent. You just don't need We just don't need 7 plus 1. What I mean by 1 extra, we have a school district of about 100 students with 1 superintendent and 1 principal in that school district. That's the specialized education where students have some difficulties. I don't know if you participated in it or not, but nevertheless, it's a lot of money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, she's the same one who raised our taxes.
Okay.
You have a club of how you waste money.
We are going to move on to item number 4, which is action items with discussion. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a preamble, so I ask you for your patience while I review a couple of items before we get into action item A, which is the approval of a resolution for a bond. The first item for consideration today is the issuance of not to exceed $5.75 million in general obligation bonds to be issued by the district pursuant to Article 20 of the School Code for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund. The Board of Education will consider the adoption of a resolution providing for the issue of bonds and a levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest thereon. The resolution sets forth the parameters for the issuance of the bonds and sale. Specifically, the parameters are, number 1, allowance for either a competitive or negotiated sale of the bond issue. PMA has recommended the use of a negotiated sale and selection of an underwriter for the board's consideration. But the resolution allows for either type of sale to provide its flexibility. 2, per statute, the bonds may have a final maturity of up to 20 years. 3, the maximum principal amount of bonds is $5.75 million. 4, the maximum interest rate is 5%. This does not mean that the final true interest cost will be this high, but it is very possible that certain maturities may have a rate up to 5%. Number 5, the purchase price refers to the amount at which investors will purchase the bonds. It is set at a minimum of 99% of the principal amount in the resolution. 6, the maximum annual tax levy is set forth at $368,072, which equals the district's 2015 debt service extension base, DSEB. Going forward, each year the board will adopt a supplemental levy resolution to capture the annual increase in the debt service extension base, which will be equal to the CPI. Finally, number 7, the resolution sets forth the delegates who must approve the final sale results, which includes the board president and the superintendent or director of finance and operations / CSBO. In attendance tonight, we have Tammy from PMA, can answer all our questions. So we'll begin with action item A, which is the approval of a bond, and I'd ask Leanne Charlotte, our secretary, to please read the resolution as it's the title of the resolution as it was included in your board packet.
Okay. Do you have it?
Oh.
Because I don't have it. Resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $5,750,000 general obligation limited tax school bonds of School District Number 65, Lake County, Illinois, for the purpose of increasing the working cash fund of said school district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the proposed sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof.
So we all know we're talking about bonds to finance the renovation of Lake Bluff Middle School for a total of $5.75 million, in addition to some out of cash funding, which is about $4.5 million. Does anybody have any questions or discussion items they want to raise before we vote?
Yeah, my only question is to both the superintendent and to my fellow members, to your knowledge, any citizens attempt to put together a petition for a referendum on this?
To my knowledge, nobody has. Nobody has contacted me or Jay. We just had the one person speak at the last board meeting. That was it.
Yeah.
And we did, as you know, send out a couple press releases on it, and we've been very transparent and open. And also, this is why we're having the meeting live this morning. So.
I had no contacts.
Anybody else?
No, me neither.
No. Nobody's reached out to me.
No. All right.
I had a question for Jay.
Could you come up by the mic, please?
Well, this could be for Jay or Tammy. I don't know who would be for. You know, in light of the tax freeze that they've talked about or come close to being approved for 2 years, which sounds like that's the closest we've come to having actual tax freeze. Are we allowed to levy for this bond issuance even if there's a tax freeze, or does that include?
Yes, that was a limited tax operating tax levy restriction. So once you get authorization to levy for the bonds, then that was not part of the tax limitation.
If you want to just stay there to get through the next two items, then if anybody has questions, you're already there.
Anybody else have any questions about this resolution? All right, so may I have a motion that the resolution as presented and read by title by Leanne Charlot, Secretary, be adopted?
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlot, yes. Julie Gottschall?
Yes.
Richard Hack?
Yes.
Phil Hood?
Yes.
John Marsden?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes. Motion is approved. All right. So now we're going to move to item 4B, the approval of selection for underwriter for the district series 2015 working cash bonds. And let's see, this motion is to approve William Blair as the underwriter for the district series 2015 working cash bonds as recommended by PMA using the following criteria. Experience marketing and selling bonds with structures similar to the district's transaction. Experience and performance underwriting recent Illinois K-12 bond issues. Fees, as well as estimated bond proceeds based on proposed interest rate scale per July 1, 2015 market conditions. Maybe Tammy, you could highlight that memo that you sent to us describing your recommendation.
Sure. So on June 18th, we sent a request for proposal to 11 underwriting firms and received 6 proposals by the deadline. And as Mark said, we went through the various criteria. And there are several components to the RFP. And one certainly asks about qualifications and experience, as Mark stated, but it also asks each underwriting firm to provide what they think the interest rate scale has been as of July 1st. So we wanted to have as much of an apples-to-apples comparison of where each firm thought the market would have been at a particular date and time. And so each firm did that, and so what we do is we take their proposed fees, we take what they believe the scale would have been in the market to come up with, in your case, what's the maximum amount of proceeds the district would generate, because that's what you care the most about. Lowest borrowing cost is going to generate the most proceeds for your project. And so we look at the quantitative side and we look at the qualitative side, because at the end of the day, we're not actually in the market on July 1st. We want to get their best sense. So after we crunch all the numbers, we also look at each firm's experience. We also look back at the transaction you did with William Blair most recently a couple of years ago and did our own analysis of what were the market conditions at that time, how did that transaction go? And from doing that, we found that that transaction was really spot on the market. So that tells us a lot about William Blair's experience. We also know from being familiar with all these firms, William Blair for the last decade has been the #1 or #2 underwriter for school district bond issues in the state of Illinois. So that's important too, because any firm can give us an interest rate scale and say, this is where we think the market will be. But it's sort of, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So when they did that transaction for you a couple of years ago and it went well, we look at their experience, we look at the scale that they gave you here in their proposed fees. We felt like not only was it very competitive, but it probably was very reliable. Whereas there was another firm by the name of Hutchison, Shockey, Early & Company. They've been around for many, many years, but they exited the public finance market on the negotiated sales side about 1.5 years ago. They have been rebuilding their team, and they just sort of re-entered it within the last several months. But their proposal provided the most proceeds to the district. Not by a huge amount, we're talking a difference of $30,000 to $40,000. But our concern there was that even though they might on paper look like they could get the district more proceeds, because they've not been in the marketplace, we were concerned about their strong sense, if you will, of the market, or really not having the experience, especially with K through 12 on the negotiated side. So that parts of it is important, because we as a financial advisor need to also feel comfortable that the firm that you work with is going to sharpen their pencil the best and get you the lowest rates and the highest proceeds. So we went through some extensive analysis, and the memo provides the list of the different firms, their fees, as well as the estimated proceeds that you could see there. So I think that summarizes what our findings were.
Anybody have any Questions or comments about that?
Well, what about Mesereau? I understand your analysis on Hutch, but what about Mesereau's compared to William Blair?
Their experience, again, so William Blair and Mesereau, I think it was a difference of a few $1,000s.
It's not much.
But their experience is not nearly as significant as William Blair's is. So, and again, sort of that confidence in which firm is going to bring the best results to the district. And with William Blair having done the transactions for you within the last couple of years, they've got a sales force on their desk. They know the Lake Bluff story, if you will. They're familiar with your credit. So they've talked to investors before about your transactions. So when they call their investors again, there's not as much education from the beginning, so to speak. There's some familiarity. That also goes a long way with marketing to investors and getting lower rates for the district. So we just don't feel that Mesereau has as much experience and feel more comfortable with William Blair.
Okay, thank you.
What goes into their calculation to determine estimated proceeds?
Sure. So every firm again gave us interest rates and yields for every maturity on your bonds. Okay. So what we do is we take for each maturity, we plug it in to our software and we run the numbers. So William Blair's interest rates and yields for each maturity, we run the numbers, we get proceeds of $5,578,000. So in this case, so if we look at Mesereau, for example, what this means is that the interest rates and yields they gave us were slightly lower in a couple of years. Okay. So that generated a little bit more proceeds for you. We're talking about a difference of a basis point or two.
And they're all projections anyway.
It's their crystal ball, right?
They are. And that's why we do quality review. We say, who's got the experience? Who do we feel most comfortable?
So in that case, really what we should probably focus more on is the fee, because the proceeds are estimated anyway and they're based on the...
Well, the fee is already netted into the estimated proceeds.
Oh, it is? Okay. So the 420 all the way on up to $15
right.
is already netted in. That's okay. Good.
Yes.
That's why the
That's
total estimated proceeds on the $15 is so low.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Anybody else? All right. So, may I have a motion to approve William Blair as underwriter for the District Series 2015 Working Cash Bonds as recommended by PMA using the following criteria: experience marketing and selling bonds and structures similar to the district's transaction, experience and performance underwriting recent Illinois K-12 bond issues, fees, and estimated bond proceeds based on proposed interest rate scale per July 1, 2015 market conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Philip Hood?
Yes.
Jen Morrison?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes.
Motion's approved.
Thank you, Tam.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you coming up early. Item 4C, approval of computer leases. As discussed in June, we purchased the new laptops. Jay has explored the idea of leasing computers and has sent a contract to our law firm for review. These leases have been reviewed by the Hodges and Louisi, and we already had this already at our, was it our committee of whole? When we get the committee of the whole, we asked it to go back to, it was our last meeting, we asked it to go back to Hodges and Louisi, right?
Well, this was different than the one that we asked to go back to Hodges.
Oh, this is not the same one?
No.
All right, Jay, can you just give us the 2-second overview of what we're talking about here?
Last meeting, we got approval to purchase these computers, so we went ahead and ordered them from Apple. In the interim, I received some proposals from different lease companies that deal with municipalities, and I've worked with American Capital before. They have very good programs, and I've had a good experience with them. They presented the lowest cost option, and it's before you. So there are 2 separate leases, one for 3 years for the student computers and one for 4 years for the staff computers. The total estimated, or the total lease costs are presented. I think we are spending less than $100,000 in total payments for the $122,000 of computers for the students, and similarly for the staff, we're spending less than the total cost that we would have to spend to buy the computers. We've got the computers on hand, and we sent the serial numbers back to American Capital, so we'll have to just finish. We'll have to put those on the schedule. But the lease has been reviewed by Hodges and Louisi, and they have incorporated our changes, so I think we're ready to go.
And it doesn't, and it also eliminates you guys the burden of having to auction them off at the end of the
Right. So because what we're actually doing right now is we just sold all our old computers. So in the old model, we would purchase them for full value. So for the students, we'd spend $122,000 now, use the computers, and then on the back end, auction them off and try to recoup as much of that residual value as possible. This way, we are all essentially getting the residual value up front. We're only paying for that portion of computer that we use, and then we just turn the computers in at the end of the lease.
Just curious, tied to this, recently we lost some computers due to theft. Were those replaced, or did we get insurance from proceeds for those? Or
we will be submitting the invoice that we get from these computers we just purchased to our insurance company for reimbursement on those
so
computers.
this is part of that replacement schedule for those.
Right. I mean, those computers were not currently in use by students. They were sort of spares and other computers that we had on hand for testing and things like that. So we'll be getting money to replace those that will help us defray the cost of this new lease. But they're two separate things.
We will be getting some money. So.
Anybody else? All right, item 4C, may I have a motion to approve the fair market value operating leases through American Capital Financial Services to include a 3-year student laptop lease with an annual payment of $33,115.42 and a 4-year faculty laptop lease at an annual amount of $32,350.03.
Before we do that, I have one more question. We have this in our budget?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So in the budget, I think I budgeted for I did budget for this,
okay,
for the lease, not for the purchase. But I did not budget for the money from the insurance company, so that would be
So that would be surplus.
Great.
Okay, so moved.
Second. Rich, did you just second? Sorry.
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Roll call vote, please.
Richard Heck,
Yes.
Phil Hood,
Yes.
John Morrison,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte, yes, Julie Gatchall.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved. Item 4D, approval of personnel report. In this particular personnel report contains the termination of Julie Shaw, who's a teaching assistant at Lake Bluff Elementary School based on performance, and the hiring of Jennifer Phillips as her replacement. Also includes the hiring of Karina Huddleston, a teaching assistant at LBMS, to replace Andrea Freeberg, who resigned at the end of the school year. These are replacements which do not result in any additional FTE to the district. Anybody have any questions before we call for a motion? May I have a motion to approve the personnel report for July 21, 2015 as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Philip Hood,
Yes.
John Morrison,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte, yes, Julie Gatchall.
Yes.
Richard Heck.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Moving on, item 4E, consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes special Board of Ed meeting minutes for 4/30/15, closed session minutes for June 9th, 15, regular Board of Ed meeting minutes for June 9th, 2015, Martin Rosenthal Board of Directors meeting for June 16th, 2015, the P card report, the bills payable report, the June treasurer's report. So before we go on, would anyone like to pull one of those for further discussion before we vote on mass?
Yes.
We actually don't have a June treasurer's report.
It's the July 2015 bills. And I have a question about that, so I think that means we pull it.
Okay, and then we vote on it afterwards?
I believe so, or maybe I could just ask the question? Okay, then even better.
Okay.
Good, okay, so I was curious about the payment to Community Unit School District 95. It was an $8,500 payment. Reading Recovery Training for Denise Sallet. What's that?
You want to do that?
That is a payment coming from our Title I grant for Denise Sallet to be trained as a reading recovery. It's a specialist position and a specialist training that lasted over the last school year. So.
And reading recovery is strategies for some of our lower achieving students to really help get them to reading level at grade level.
Mm-hmm. I mean, $8,500 struck me as a lot of money to train one individual who may leave.
It's the number one rated reading intervention for students in kindergarten and first grade. And so that's why we really felt like expending that money, and especially from the title grant, was an appropriate use of funds.
Okay.
When you say the title grant, were you giving money towards that?
We receive money every year to this point from the federal government for the purpose of helping and working with students who are at risk of failure. And so our title grant last year was in the amount of close to $60,000, and so part of that money is being used to train Denise.
And how long has she been with the district?
I'm thinking of she has been here since, I want to say, the year 2000.
Okay.
So.
And is there anything done to ensure that there's a period of time where we recoup that investment in her, that she stays? I don't.
She's tenured and she's been here so
Okay.
long. I don't see, there's not, it wouldn't even be worth offering an incentive because she's situated here.
Yeah.
Well,
2000's a good long
on
tenure.
top of that, as a part of the reading recovery, there's an agreement that Denise signs with reading recovery. There's also an agreement that the district signs.
Mhm.
And part of that agreement with the district is that we will support her with supplies and materials, but then also that we're going to actually, there are going to be students that require that level of support. So if she were to leave the district, she would have to find another district that had that agreement already in place. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda for July 21st, 2015 as presented by the administration. It's included in your board packet, in which I recently summarized.
So,
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Philip Hood,
Yes.
John Larson,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes, Julie Gatchall,
yes.
Richard Head.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Okay, item 5, FOIA requests. None? None. Moving on. Item 6, public comments. Anybody? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn at 7:30?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you in September. We're in a moment.